Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous materials on H.R. 3548.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, across America, there are people who are hanging on by a thin economic lifeline called unemployment insurance. Without the passage of this bill, that thread will break for over 1 million workers before the end of this year, plunging them and their families into an economic abyss and threatening to reverse the positive signs we are beginning to see in the economy. We can prevent that this afternoon by passing this bill. This legislation will provide an additional 13 weeks of extended benefits to individuals in hard-hit states, specifically those with a 3-month average unemployment rate at or above 8.5%. It's important to note that this legislation is fully offset and does not increase the deficit. At the beginning of this year, America felt the bare-knuckled brunt of what has already been called the Great Recession. Excuse me. Nearly 750,000 jobs were lost in the month of January alone, and we met the crisis head-on. The steps we took earlier this year helped us turn away from an economic catastrophe and toward recovery. Don't take my word for it. Former John McCain economic advisor Mark Zandi said, without the stimulus, job losses would have been immeasurably worse. But even as economic indicators show improvement, we know we cannot replace 7 million lost jobs overnight. Recovery will take time. There are still 6 unemployed workers for every available job, so extended unemployment compensation isn't a convenience, it's a necessity. Since I introduced this legislation 2 weeks ago, my office phones have been ringing nonstop with calls from Americans all across the country who have exhausted or soon will exhaust their benefits, asking when is it going to pass. I've heard from paraplegics who cannot find a job because attorneys are competing against them for employment, from contractors who are still reeling from the collapse of the housing market, and from school teachers whose local school districts could not afford to keep them on the payroll. Without quick action, they will become unable to afford their mortgages or health coverage. Providing these Americans with modest economic lifeline is not only the humane thing to do, but it's in the economic interest of the country. Every UI dollar generates $1.64 in positive impact in the economy. That supports existing jobs and our fragile housing market. In other words, UI, unemployment insurance, is a win for every American. I urge all members to support this bipartisan, budget-neutral bill to extend unemployment benefits, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance.